Because when life gives you lemons, you suck dick on the battlefield. What's up, book nerds? I'm Lucky's Universe, and today we are concluding our Court of Thorns and Roses series review, bringing it home with A Court of Wings and Ruin. And I have never been more excited for a series to end. Before we begin, I'm going to start with my disclaimer. I am a full believer in everyone being able to share their opinions about books on the internet, whether they be positive or negative. In saying that, I'm not the be-all and end-all when it comes to books. Just because I say a book is trash doesn't mean it is trash, and doesn't mean that the people who like that book are trash. But I do have a writing degree, so maybe I'm like a tiny bit qualified to judge. Now I have my notes and I have my tea, and we are ready to go. So as always, we're going to start with the plot. A Court of Wings and Ruin, the plot is... it's a collection of words that all mean things. The beginning of the book opens with a chapter from Rhysand's perspective, and I thought finally we are going to hear about someone else other than Farah, only to find out that Rhysand is equally insufferable, and the whole chapter is just like him walking through a battlefield thinking deep and meaningful thoughts. We cut back to Farah, who is at the Spring Court, and at the end of A Court of Mist and Fury, we found out that she's like playing double agent, so she's pretending that she's pretending that she was under a spell by Rhysand, and the spell is broken, so now she's like in love with Talon again, but not really. She's just working out how to destroy Talon from the inside out. And Farah's just plotting to destroy Talon the whole time. She's like, I know we've both been through some hard times and we both have PTSD, and I've done really terrible things that I thought were right. You know, I killed people for you. However, while I expect everyone to forgive me, I need everyone to hate you. Although at this point, I'm not even convinced that Farah has PTSD anymore. It seemed to magically disappear when Rhysand became her boyfriend. Talon is still working with Hybern to hurt people, I think. I don't even really know. I don't care anymore. As part of her plot, Farah pretends to be interested romantically in Lucian in order to make Talon mad, and she kind of just turns all of his people against him. She destroys everything he ever held dear and then decides to hightail it back to the Night Court with Lucian in tow. Lucian has now switched sides. He's no longer standing with Talon, he's gone with Farah to the Night Court, because at the end of A Court of Mist and Fury, we found out when Farah's sisters got turned into fairies, Lucian discovered that one of Farah's sisters, Elaine, was his mate. The funny thing is that even though Lucian gets a love interest in this book and more page time, he still has absolutely nothing to do with the plot. Back at the Night Court, Farah reunites with her sisters. Nesta is still a bitch, unsurprisingly, and Elaine has gone a little bit cray-cray. A lot of the characters in the book get a whole bunch of backstory that I guess is supposed to make us care about them. We find out that Elaine is a seer and she's somehow connected to the cauldron, and I don't care. I don't care. Now there's this whole like society of fairies. There's like normal fairies, and then there's the high fae, which are like the lords or the super most powerful ones, and they all get together, Talon included, to sort of discuss about what they're gonna do. They're trying to get Talon to help him. It's basically just one big dick measuring contest, and Talon loses. Events happen, Hybern destroys the wall, there's a big war, Rhysand dies, which I was actually excited about, thinking maybe Farah is finally going to find some personality outside of her love interest, but no, he's resurrected. Yay. Everyone goes back to Valaris. Farah magically decides that she's going to forgive Talon, and everyone lives happily ever after. Okay, onto the characters. Farah in this book was underwhelming, to say the least. I just found her so annoying in the way that she was so hypocritical towards Talon, because Talon explains that he's kind of doing all these terrible things because he believes that it's the right thing to do. Farah, in many other books, has done terrible things because she believed it was right. So why does she keep expecting people to forgive her but somehow cannot find it in herself to forgive Talon and decides to destroy everything. And then, as always, Farah cannot go more than a few pages without telling us how strong and powerful and independent she was, although she doesn't actually really use her powers that much in the entire book. She just spends the whole book ogling Reese and thinking about things like always. Yeah, Farah was just disappointing, underwhelming, and I don't particularly want to talk about her anymore. Now we have Talon 2.0, who is still as perfect as he was in A Court of Mist and Fury. Rhysand and Farah are kind of worshipped as like this super healthy, super well-developed relationship, like power couple. But really I found their relationship so mind-numbingly boring. Like, we get that Rhys is the feminist of all feminists. He never tells Farah what to do, he lets her make her own decisions, he doesn't get mad at her, but his habit of never getting mad at her and just letting her do whatever she wants just makes them boring because their relationship has no conflict, and like, you know, it's just boring. Like, there were so many opportunities in this book for them to go through like some sort of development, for them to like work through a conflict together, but they just seem to solve all their arguments like that, and it just seems really unrealistic or unrelatable because relationships don't really work that way. Like, mates or not, they have to have conflict somewhere. Then we have Talon, and I can't really say much about Talon because I don't even think he's a character in this book anymore. The main point that I wrote down about Talon was that I just didn't feel anything about his reconciliation with Farah, but I guess this has more to do with Farah than it does with Talon. I kept going back through the book trying to find where Farah worked through her problem when it came to Talon, or where she decided to forgive him, or where she like came to a peace with herself that she felt like she could forgive him. And it's just not there. It's like the book ends and she's like, okay, like I'm just gonna hope that he finds happiness. And she just leaves him a note. And that to me just seemed kind of like a cop-out. Like, it seemed like the author had sort of forgotten to mend or have some sort of reconciliation with their relationship and was like, oh crap, okay, Farah forgives him with a note and that's the end of it. I didn't know that a character relationship could be both lukewarm and dry at the same time, but here we are. I feel like when it comes to Talon, this book could have been so much better if we had just been allowed to read couple of chapters from Talon's perspective, because all we get from Talon through this entire series is him through Farah's eyes, and she's biased against him the whole time. We don't get to hear any of his justifications, any of his thoughts, any of his feelings and his emotional conflict. It's all coming through Farah, and we can't rely on her because she hates him. He just had so much opportunity for development and to be an actual good character if the author had just like maybe let us inside of his head for a little bit. Just a little bit, you know? I wish that Talon hadn't been made so evil. I wish he'd retained some redeeming qualities so that Farah could have had some sort of struggle between her feelings for Talon and her feelings for Rhysand. I have a theory about why there was such a dramatic character or personality change with Talon between the end of A Court of Thorns and Roses and the beginning of A Court of Mist and Fury. I feel like because Farah is set up as, you know, the most saintliest character. She is strong, she is powerful, she is like cares for the poor and does all the good that she can and blah 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 blah. She's like a special little snowflake. The author wanted a way to make Farah leave Talon but still look like the good guy. So she made Talon evil, so everyone's like, yeah, of course Farah left Talon for Rhysand. Talon's so abusive. Farah has to leave. Whereas if Talon had been somewhat of a good guy and Farah had left him for Rhysand, readers would have been like, man, is that like the right thing to do? They would have had shock horror, character development, and emotional depth. What? I don't know, I guess I just have a soft spot for Talon. Like, I get that he's evil and abusive now, but everyone just keeps hating on him, and he was such a missed opportunity character. Like, there was so much room for development, there was so much room for him to be an actual interesting character, and he just wasn't. Throughout this book, I identified 3 irrelevant characters. These are characters that just exist, but if you take them out, nothing in the events of the plot would change. Lucian is no more of a character than a blade of grass. Nesta, when you read through the book, has no purpose in the plot. I think that she just exists to make Farah look good. This is something that often happens whenever there's a female protagonist that the author wants to display as like being really good, is that they create like almost an opposition female character and we go, oh my gosh, she is like such a bitch, she's so bad, and look how great this other girl is, you know? Nesta is to Farah what Talon is to Rhysand. And finally we have Cassian, and I know people will get mad because everyone loves Cassian, and to be honest, I enjoyed Cassian's character. I mean, he still has no character development. He is still pretty two-dimensional. He exists only for witty banter and comedic purposes, but sometimes I like a bit of comedic purpose, but again, he just doesn't help the plot in any way. If he was gone, nothing would change. That's pretty much wrapped up the characters, and I know after this I usually go into writing style, but there's really nothing different about the writing style that I haven't said before in previous videos. So if you haven't watched those, go and watch them. I talk about the writing style. It's pretty much the same in this book. Instead, I want to talk about more of the broader ideas that are attempted to be explained in this book. One of the things that really kind of irked me was Moore and the concept of her bisexuality. I am all for LGBTQ+ representation in novels. We need it. What I don't like is when a character is just thrown in there for the sake of representation. We get through 3/4 of A Court of Wings and Ruin, and then we come to this 6-page monologue where Moore reveals that she's bisexual. However, after this 6-page monologue, Moore's sexuality has nothing to do with the rest of the plot. It is never mentioned again. And I was left kind of like, why? Like, why did you even say it if it wasn't going to be part of the story? If it wasn't going to be mentioned again, or if it wasn't going to aid her character development, you just gave her a 6-page monologue and then nothing else. There's no more development, no more new events, it's just there. And it kind of felt weird when she was admitting to Farah about her sexuality, because Farah was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. That's why you never sort of started dating Azrael. This really weirded me out, the way that her thought process worked, that she thought like in order for a girl to not like a guy, she must be gay. It also kind of annoyed me how Farah was always pestering Moore about hooking up with Azrael. She was kind of thinking that it's okay, like if a boy is in love with you for so many years, you are somehow obligated to go out with him, and that's like not the case. Not to mention, on the part of Moore mentions that she's kind of kept Azrael on a string for centuries. And I know fairy time is kind of different from human time, but centuries is a long time to string somebody along. This sort of melds into my other point, or the other concept that I wanted to talk about, and that is the female representation over this entire series. Because for a book that's supposed to be about feminism and powerful women and female relationships, there aren't really many likable female characters. Think about it, we've got Ianthe, who is an evil priestess, everyone hates her. Moore has led a guy on for centuries. Elaine is like meek and submissive, Nesta is a bitch, and Farah is annoying. If this book is trying to make a positive point about feminism, I don't see it. And there are way more hateable women in this story than hateable men. Like, the balance is so uneven. I think it's also important to make a distinction between being a bitch and being a badass. Because especially in today's day and age, often when a woman is like assertive or confident, people will write her off as like, you're bossy, you're a bitch. And that tends to happen to characters as well. And people sometimes say like, you just don't like Nesta because she's confident. Like, you're socially brainwashed to think that confident women or assertive women are bitches. But I think there is a very clear difference. I don't think that Nesta is assertive. She's just mean to people for like no reason, and I guess that's why her character doesn't make sense and why I think she's more of a bitch than a badass. Because it's one thing to be confident and assertive and just be direct in saying what you want, and then there's another thing to just hate everyone without reason. The final idea that I want to talk about is the sex. And boy, is there too much of it in this book. At the weirdest of times. It's just something that really irks me about this book, aside from my just normal feelings about sex in books. Like, I just don't like it, it makes me uncomfortable. Most of the time it doesn't need to be there. But it seems like Reese and Farah not only are constantly having sex, but like constantly having the best sex ever. Like every single time, it is mind-blowing, it is world-shattering, and I'm like, what? And I get that like it's fairies, it's magical, it's fantasy, but at some point it just becomes so laughable and just like cringeworthy. I think it's important to note that there's this one particular scene where Reese and Farah arrive at like this battle camp before a war, and Farah's talking about how outside of her tent she can hear like the screams of people dying and people like calling out for help and, you know, the sounds of war. And she decides that this is the perfect time to give Reese a BJ. Because when life gives you lemons, you suck dick on the battlefield. Final thoughts. This book was trash. This entire series was trash. And that is my opinion, and if you have a different opinion, I support you. There just seems to be no character development, and there were characters that just didn't need to be there. The female representation is so questionable. All in all, it seemed like kind of a safe book. Not safe in the terms of like the graphic violence and the sex and all the stuff that happens, but safe in the way that it was a very predictable story. There's no plot twist that you can't see coming. And this book was just long and boring. And I'm glad that it's over. So that's it for my review on A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I hope you have enjoyed our journey through the Court of Thorns and Roses series. If you agree with my opinion, leave a comment. If you disagree with my opinion, leave a comment. Remember, on this channel, we promote debate, not hate. Remember to like and subscribe and share this video. If you don't already follow me on TikTok, check that out. I post some pretty cool stuff on there. I will also leave a link to my Twitter and my Goodreads account below. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you later.